is Baseball Tonight, the podcast.
Thanks for listening. I'm Buster Olney, and this is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Friday, May 16th. On this date in baseball history, in 1917, and you tell me if this sounds familiar, thanks to a scoring change made after the game by a panel of sports writers reversing a first-inning hit into an error, Bob Groom of the Browns no-hit the White Sox 4-0. Ernie Koob, I think that's how it's pronounced, is K-O-O-B, his St. Louis teammate, also threw a no-hitter the day before against the White Sox. It was a day packed with walk-off hits on Thursday, and forget next level, Johnny Cueto is on another planet right now. Let's get to it.
The first pitch.
Johnny Cueto continues to roll. I love this stat that was sent out by ESPN Stats and Information today. It was a list of the complete game leaders by team in Major League Baseball so far. So you have like the Rangers have 2, the Rays have 2. Johnny Cueto has 3. He leads the major leagues in complete games. And after he was so dominant against the San Diego Padres on Thursday, Brian Price talked about how he's doing a lot of things right.
It's funny, as we covered so much about Johnny in the start of the season, he's so good at holding runners. I mean, you saw on a couple close plays at first base on the pickoff. I think he has the quickest feet and the best move in the National League. He's great at holding runners. He's quick to the plate. He gives our catchers a chance to throw guys out should they attempt to steal. Every facet of the game seems to just be right where it needs to be to have a sensational start to the season, which he has had.
Now, we'll talk more about Johnny Cueto in a little bit when we have the Fireball Express. Justin Havens and Karl Ravech will be by. Marlins pitcher Jose Fernandez is set to have Tommy John surgery today. It, of course, will officially end the season for the reigning National League Rookie of the Year. Rangers pitcher Martin Perez says he'll have Tommy John surgery. There was some back and forth last night where his agent was saying, well, actually, the decision hasn't formally been made. We still have to talk to the Rangers, but let's face it, that's the way that he's headed. That's the direction he's headed in right now. The Rays placed infielder Ben Zobrist on the disabled list. The switch-hitting second baseman dislocated his left thumb Wednesday on a headfirst slide. He told reporters yesterday that he's actually can throw, can do a lot of things, and he thinks he'll be on the disabled list only for the 15 days, in part because while he dislocated his thumb, he actually didn't break his thumb. The Yankees placed outfielder Carlos Beltran on the disabled list with a sore elbow. He's going to get some treatment for the next 2 weeks and see if that cortisone helps. If it doesn't, then he'll need surgery to remove the bone spur that's causing discomfort in his elbow. And he told reporters if that happens, he'll miss 6 to 8 weeks. Cardinals chairman Bill DeWitt is going to chair the committee to find Commissioner Bud Selig's successor. The panel also will include Jerry Reinsdorf of the White Sox, Colorado chairman Dick Montfort, Philadelphia president Dave Montgomery, Artie Moreno of the Angels, Bob Nutting of the Pirates, and the Twins' Jim Pohlad. We'll be talking with Karl Ravech about that. He certainly is going to have some insight. I mentioned the walk-offs. Man, there were a bunch of them on Thursday. Some cool endings. In Milwaukee, Chris Davis got a broken bat, 2-run single to beat the Pirates 4-3. After the game, Ron Renicky talked about how this game played out.
Yeah, it was a nice ball game. Didn't do much there early offensively, but Yo did a nice job. Made the one mistake on the high slider, but other than that, I thought he threw the ball really well and kept us in there, and we scratched. Ricky continues to swing the bat well, got us an early point, and KD there at the end just he's got some big hits for us. You look at his overall numbers, and they're not where he would like them to be or us, but he's got some big hits, and that it's important when these guys have good at-bats when it's on the line.
In Minnesota, Aaron Hicks got a walk-off hit, and they absolutely went crazy. They beat the Red Sox 4-3. Andrew Miller actually lost 2 walk-off decisions in the series, and if you watch this game, after it was over, he just crouched down near the mound and was just almost looked dumbfounded by the way that this played out. And late last night in Anaheim, Mike Trout came to the plate with 2 runners on base. with the Angels losing 5-3, and he killed his first walk-off hit of his career. After the game, he talked to Fox Sports West about how it felt.
Oh, this is awesome. Huge win for us tonight. Keep it going. That's what I'm talking about. You're fine. Yeah, I'm good. I don't want to get soaked, but, man, it felt good to hit that ball. That was good for, the guys in the beginning of the innings get on base and just give us a chance at the end. And, I hit that ball over the fence.
It's the Fireball Express with Karl Ravech and Justin Havens on Baseball Tonight.
Karl Ravech is the host of Baseball Tonight. Justin Havens is like the Ben Zobrist of Baseball Tonight. And we call their segment the Fireball Express because of an infamous broadcast trip that turned into something like Weekend at Bernie's. Karl, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I think it's important that you do remind everybody what the Fireball Express was all about, and you touched on it. I don't know how much detail we need to go into, but to remind people, it did have to do with an overnight flight from San Diego to Cincinnati in which there were 8 people and seating for 5. I think that's critical that we get that out there. And what was the aid which allowed us to kind of get through that trip? So nice job, Buster.
Sure, and I just want to note for the record, I have no recollection of that trip whatsoever. Justin, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thanks. Nice to be back.
Okay, guys. And Justin, I know you're tired. You were up late last night. We had a great time on the Nerd Fest, which Karl is not a nerd, so he was not part of that. But
I've been accused of worse, though, Buster. I'll be honest with you. And having watched some of that program, I saw people like Barry Larkin out there and Eric Wedge at one point. So I'm not certain it was a full nerd-on festival.
No, it's interesting. When the cameras turn off at the end of the segments we do on the Nerd Fest, when those guys are invited, you don't see this if you're watching on television, but they actually get up and run out of the studio. They just can't take it. After a while, they just have to quickly as possible.
Fear of contamination.
Okay, yeah, exactly. Hey, on Thursday we had 3 great walk-offs, and I wanted to get your take on which of the 3. One was for Chris Davis of the Brewers, Aaron Hicks of the Twins, Mike Trout of the Angels. Which was your favorite of those 3? Karl?
Well, I'll say Trout is because I'm a big fan of what Trout represents and what I think he will represent for the next probably 5 to 10 years. He's been struggling, so somebody that's struggling when they kind of have that moment, it's really a neat thing to see. But I think bigger picture on the Angels and the Brewers, I think at the sort of quarter point, we can all, and I think we've been doing this for enough time, we can all kind of see the larger picture here is that the Angels just are coming off a road trip in which Garrett Richards continued to pitch really well. Skaggs has pitched really well. They seem to have developed a rotation that was a question mark. We know that the offense is going to be really good. So I think bigger picture for both those two teams, I think you can definitively say, barring injuries, and that's a big deal, especially in Milwaukee's case, but barring injuries, the walk-offs are nice, but they're more symbolic of what these two teams, I think, are capable of. I think the Angels will be in that race all season long, and I think the Brewers will very much be with the Cardinals all season long. That no longer are things like these flukes. Walk-offs are really cool, and when Pittsburgh seems to get one this year, it then leads to a losing 4 out of the next 5. In the case of the Angels and the Brewers, those are more significant for what they mean, I think, larger than just a walk-off moment. But I'll go with Trout to answer your question.
Yeah, and I think especially with the Rangers suffering the pitching injuries they have, I have a hard time believing with all the losses they've suffered to the Sable list that they'll be able to stay in that race. And right now, I believe the Angels are second in the American League in run differential behind the Oakland Athletics. I agree with you. I feel stupid about some of my picks. Like right now, my pick for the Rays to represent the American League in the World Series, not looking good. But I'm not feeling so bad about my pick of the Angels to win the West. Justin, of those 3 walk-offs, which one was your favorite?
I hate to be unoriginal, but I'm also going to go with Trout, but for a different reason. When you've seen a guy that was so highly regarded come up and struggle so endlessly like Mike Trout has from the start of his career it's really nice when you get a little bit of sliver of hope, like a walk-off hit, that maybe he might turn into the player that we all thought he was going to be.
Oh, my goodness. I actually liked Aaron Hicks because it was yesterday morning when I was going through the papers around the country reading different stories. Yesterday morning there were stories posted in the papers in Minnesota saying that Aaron Hicks actually been called into Ron Gardenhire's office the day before, and Gardenhire made very clear to him that they were not happy with his preparation, and specifically it was noted that Hicks sometimes showed up at the ballpark not having any idea who the opposing starting pitcher was going to be. So before yesterday's game, the story was about Aaron Hicks and how they, the Twins feel like that he needs to step it up and step up the effort. And what does he do? He goes out and gets a hit, and that was kind of a cool moment. Karl?
I think to your point, and Aaron Hicks, and whether it be Castellanos or Middlebrooks, and this kind of can dovetail off of what Justin said with Trout in a joking way, is there is a big component to this game, and I think people like Pujols and Ortiz represent it, that somebody like Aaron Hicks has to kind of get a memo, and sometimes it takes a demotion. But the preparation that goes into the sort of ingredients for success are huge. And when you have Aaron Hicks acknowledge even after the game-winning hit, that maybe I need to prepare more, that's like an 18-year-old kid kind of saying, I didn't check the schedule, I don't know if I'm working today. And you don't see that with the veterans who have been around and succeeded for a long time. Perhaps the best example that we see on a regular basis was somebody like Curt Schilling and his preparation, whether it be the umpires going through the lineups of the other team. You're not going to lose on that front. You may not have your best stuff that day. A pitcher may throw a pitch that you just couldn't hit. But to go into a situation where you're unprepared for virtually any circumstance doesn't serve you well. And more importantly, you're there to serve the team. And if you're not serving the team because you're not prepared and you don't know who the starting pitcher is that you're going to face, unless you're of freakish talent, you're not going to survive here. And I think that's what Ron Gardenhire was kind of getting at. I read those articles too, and this idea that Aaron Hicks was called in and got the message like, dude, either get on board with what we wanted you to do to prepare for this, or get off the ship. And he was close to getting off of it. And if that behavior continues, he won't stay up there long. Is there a more disciplined organization than the Minnesota Twins because of the payroll? So that stuff doesn't resonate with Gardenhire and the Twins.
Another guy who's really absolutely rabid about preparation is Clayton Kershaw. When I worked on a piece in spring training about him, A.J. Ellis, his catcher, was telling me that, part of the reason why Kershaw is so devoted to his workout regimen is because when he goes to the mound to make his start, he doesn't want to have any reason for regret. He wants to have uncovered every rock in his preparation so that when he can go to the mound, his mind can be completely clear because he's physically trained, he's mentally trained, he's prepared to do everything because he doesn't want to have the, sitting at his locker after he got his brains beat in thinking, I could have done more. So, this was a great, maybe a moment of reinforcement for Aaron Hicks because I'm sure he felt pretty beat down after, having the meetings with Gardenhire, then having to answer the questions with the media. And when he got that hit, he went absolutely crazy, which you can completely understand. Now, before we get to the next level player evaluations, Justin, last week, after hearing about your need for DollarShaveClub.com, a family member joined. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my brother actually listened to the podcast and ended up joining, and he says that the quantity of materials that you receive are certainly sufficient and a great value for the price paid. So we have a satisfied customer from the podcast, and I guess a satisfied customer from Dollar Shave as well.
Well, is there anything worse than buying razors? You got to drive to the store, find a parking spot, find the locked plastic razor fortress, and the one guy who has the key is on break. Then when you finally get to the register, it's $20. Madness. Justin's brother knows that now. Don't put yourself through that. Join DollarShaveClub.com for a couple of bucks a month. DollarShaveClub.com will ship amazing quality blades and other cool bathroom stuff right to your door every month like work. You get a package in the mail with everything you need for a great shave. Their blades are just as good as the big boys at a fraction of the price. Not an everyday shaver? Join the club and opt for delivery every other month. With DollarShaveClub.com, there's no more trudging to the store for overpriced blades. No more cutting up your face by squeezing too many shaves out of that last blade in the pack. And more importantly, no more plastic razor fortress. They got more than razors, too. You got to try their Dr. Carver's Easy Shave Butter. The best thing you can put on your face before shaving it. Join me, everyone at baseball tonight, and hundreds of thousands of guys who've upgraded to the smarter way to shave. Shave time, shave money. Join DollarShaveClub.com/Buster. That's DollarShaveClub.com/Buster. Okay, guys, let's get to Johnny Cueto. We were looking at the highlights of his domination of the Padres yesterday, and he's got that hip turn, and you're trying to figure out if he's more like Louis Tiant or Pedro Martinez or Greg Maddux. That's how good he's going right now, right, Justin?
I mean, it's pretty incredible what we're seeing from him. You know, we discussed it a little bit on the show last night, but just to toss out a few numbers. Opponents are 2 for 27 with runners in scoring position. They're 6 for 60 with men on base this season. Last night he threw, or yesterday afternoon rather, he threw his changeup a season high 25 times, and the Padres were hitless in 4 at-bats, ending in a changeup. Over his last 6 games, he's thrown 124 changeups, and that's netted him 31 outs and no hits allowed. Through 9 starts, Cueto has stranded 40. I believe you said this last night, actually. Cueto has stranded 40.
Oh, it's my stat. Can I give it? Can I give my stat?
Yes.
I went to Fish last night because I saw this on Fangraphs, and I'm like, oh, my God, this is unbelievable. He's had 46 runners on base, and he has stranded 43 of them, which is an unbelievable percentage. Okay, go ahead, Justin. Didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine. He became the first pitcher in modern baseball history, which is since 1900, to allow 5 hits or fewer and throw at least 7 innings in his first 9 games of a season. I mean, it's really been, you haven't seen this level of domination from him, but you've always seen this sort of flash, and it was always about staying healthy. And you can't imagine a better time for him to have put it all together than a time where Homer Bailey has kind of been mediocre and Matt Latos has been on the DL.
Karl, is he the best pitcher in baseball right now?
Well, let's hope that he doesn't have to deal with a Tommy John surgery, because every time we have a best pitcher of baseball, that's what seems to happen, or some injury. And I think after that Fireball Express flight, we all landed in Cincinnati, and if I'm not mistaken, although I could have been because of what happened on that flight, Johnny Cueto was the starting pitcher, and the dialogue going into that game was, how many pitches until Johnny Cueto gets hurt? And if I'm not mistaken, and I could have been dreaming, but I felt like within the first 7 pitches, he tweaked something. Am I remembering that correctly, or am I still laying on the floor of the Fireball Express?
I'm trying to remember. Yeah, you might be right. I think that happened early in that game.
I swear they had a meeting on the mound. But to your point about Cueto, I was with Darren Bragg, of course, who used to play in the major leagues and now works for the Cincinnati Reds the other day, and we were discussing. I asked him the question. We weren't discussing it, but I asked him a question. I said, "Is there something missing from that team?" And whether he just was a Reds loyalist or he truly believes it, he thinks guys like Todd Frazier are really tough and really good, and that Bruce is a phenomenal player. But he says that Johnny Cueto, in his opinion, and he played in the majors for a number of years, is the best pitcher in baseball. And he also, of course, like a smart baseball guy who's played, brought up, I think Johnny's either got 1 year left or 2 years left, and there's no better time to have a good pitcher than having one that's motivated to make a big, big paycheck. And Cueto certainly is in line to do that. And to Justin's point, if he can stay healthy, I'm sure you guys discussed, last night, the one thing that generally tends to skew these numbers And it's that sort of famous batting average on balls in play statistic. The batters who have a huge one tend to have these balls fall in. In his case, his batting average on balls in play is like 160. So he's benefiting from some luck. He's also benefiting from a pretty good defense that plays behind him. But to watch Johnny Cueto throw a cutter for a guy that used to be sort of a fastball slider guy, it can keep the Reds relevant in that race because really without him, there is a feeling to me that there was something missing, and he's a linchpin guy. So there are a lot of factors that are going into his success, and health is going to be the most important one.
Yeah, just so Karl knows he was not going crazy, Cueto was hit on the left wrist by a Matt Carpenter, a comebacker on the game. A trainer came out and checked him, and he made a few practice throws and stayed in the game. And in regards to the batting average on balls in play, Cueto is exactly at 160, which is 62 points lower than the next closest starting pitcher, which is obviously a massive gap. So some of that will come back, but he was right on.
Karl, guys, Justin, I wanted to run this at you, and I don't mean this in a challenging way, but you probably are better at explaining it than I would be. In looking at Fangraphs today, I mean, Johnny Cueto right now is off to an unbelievable start, and you ran through some of his statistics, and yet on Fangraphs, when you look at the leaderboard, he ranks 13th in baseball. 13th, not first, not second, not in the top 10 in pitching WAR. Why do you think that is, just statistically?
My guess is that there's some regression being built in for that depressed batting average on balls in play. I have not looked at that specifically. In fact, I didn't even know where he ranked in WAR until you brought it up right now. But that is at least somewhat mystifying, I would say. Well, the other part of this, actually, just pulling up the page right now, is that as you referred to earlier, he's stranded 99.5% of batters this year, which we're talking about a 160 batting average on balls in play being unsustainable. A 99.5% strand rate or whatever it is, that goes to another level of unsustainability. And so I think, as those stats tend to do, it's not just about what you've accomplished, but how you've accomplished it. And I think while 13th might seem, that seems like it's a little off, it's factoring in the high level of luck that Johnny Cueto has experienced, which isn't to say that he's not still awesome. It's just saying that part of why he has been so awesome has been good fortune, as Karl alluded to.
Now, Karl, I wanted to ask you about the announcement from Major League Baseball that they're forming this committee to look for the next commissioner. And I wrote in the column yesterday that there's some stuff going on behind the scenes, that there are owners in baseball who are not happy with the processes and how it's played out so far. I mean, my goodness, we're 8 months away from Bud Selig leaving that post. We've known for a while that they're going to need a replacement for him, and yet they're just formally beginning this now. And I've been told by sources that there is some unhappiness with the idea, the perception among some of the owners that Bud Selig is essentially sort of lining up votes for his chosen successor, Rob Manfred, or his favorite successor, I should say. And I was told that Rob right now has the support of about 20 of the 30 teams, but you need 23 votes to actually get in, and there are a core of teams that are not interested in having Rob be the next commissioner. Tim Brosnan, who's an executive vice president with Major League Baseball, has also been mentioned. But the argument being forwarded by some of the owners is, look, Bud shouldn't have a say in this, shouldn't have a big say in it, because he's leaving the game, so to speak. And you have owners who have money invested. They're going to continue to be involved in the business in a way that Bud is not. And some of these owners feel like we should be the ones who are lining up the successor and not Bud Selig. What have you heard? What do you think of that?
Well, I think there's a number of ways to kind of look at where they're at now. We'll start with what David Stern did in the NBA. Clearly handpicked his successor, kind of groomed him. Bud never made a statement that that's what he was he was doing with Rob, or that's what was happening almost organically by Rob's connection to Bud.
Yeah, and and just to be clear, that's me extrapolating based on what I'm hearing from sources. You're right. Bud has never come out and said that formally. That's the perception of some of the people involved.
Right, and listen, I don't necessarily know that would be an erroneous statement. I think that over time, and certainly with his appointment as president of Major League Baseball, there was a statement made, and especially as it relates to Tim Brosnan there, that look, if one or two of these guys, if one of them is going to be elevated, I'm letting everyone know that my inclination at this date, which is when he said I'm going to move Rob up, I think that was a very public statement about one of the ways that the commissioner can see this going. I think the other part of that dynamic with regards to other owners is that given the massive success financially that they have all achieved underneath Selig, I would think that many of them would hope to continue along the same path rather than diverge from it dramatically. On the other hand, if I'm sitting in Rob Manfred's seat right now and I have 20 of the 23 votes that I need, knowing that you have a group of owners that Selig has been able to, over the years, massage into one of the sort of great consensus building programs, in the country, I would feel pretty good about this idea that you're telling me I'm on this day 3 votes shy of getting approval by this group relative to anybody else whose name would come up. You're going to tell me that they're going to be able to build consensus to even that degree? I have a hard time believing that. So I think on that side, it favors Rob, and I think Bud's ability to basically get anything he wants done. If he's in your corner, he's probably worth 3 or 4 votes. The other side of that coin is, if I'm Rob Manfred, I also look at this and say, wow, the road just got a lot tougher. This is not going to be roll out the red carpet and, like Adam Silver, I'm going to be anointed the commissioner. And I think you know as well as I do that Reinsdorf and Selig on so many levels are so close. There are very few people that are as close to the commissioner as Jerry Reinsdorf is, and I think on some level, unless this is more Buster of a smokescreen and Manfred's going to end up getting that job, I find it interesting that Reinsdorf would come out very publicly and say this has to be more transparent and we should do it more in a public way and we should open it up. And lastly, I think the statement should very well be, if I'm Major League Baseball, and we are as people that work in the industry invested in it, I would like them to open it up and have Rob be as much a consideration as anyone else. And in the end, make the decision that will best serve Major League Baseball. And I believe, in the end, having Rob Manfred be the commissioner or somebody who has massive influence over that particular office would serve baseball best.
Well, you know how the media works, Karl, that we'll wait for the results and then we'll paint the narrative after the fact. Right. I think maybe the best example of that, as someone else who is in a parallel world in Rob's position, Hillary Clinton was the presumptive nominee for the Democratic Party in 2008. And when she lost the lead to Barack Obama, it was, boy, it's a bad thing to be out there as the leader. And if she had won, it would have been, well, her power was overwhelming. And I think that's exactly what we're probably going to be saying about Rob's situation. If, in fact, he doesn't get the commissionership, that his name is out there too soon. And if he gets it, we'll say that, well, he had Selig's backing, so he was in a commanding position. We got about 2 minutes, guys. Justin, I want to get through some next-level player evaluations. First, Xander Bogaerts.
So, earlier this season we talked about Bogaerts, on the first or second podcast about how patient he was being and how selective he was being. The problem is that he's not really doing anything with the pitches when he does swing. A few things to note here. He's got, since last season with a minimum of 300 plate appearances. He's got the 5th lowest slugging percentage against pitches in the lower half in all of baseball, and he's the 2nd worst this year. The people that are quote, ahead of him or worse than him in the last 2 seasons, Henry Blanco, Jason Nix, and a handful of other similarly inspiring characters. He also has the lowest batting average against off-speed pitches from right-handed batters since his debut on August 20th last year. He's .087. That's just ahead of Lyle Overbay, Alexi Amarista, Nate Shearholt, and Brandon Crawford. And he's struggling defensively. You know, he's among the league worst in defensive runs saved, as well as a handful of defensive misplay categories that Baseball Info Solutions tracks. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk about what the Red Sox are going to do on the left side of that infield, and Bogaerts has left a lot to be desired so far.
Mike Moustakas, this coming from a request on Twitter from JArena728.
So, I mean, I don't think this is the year he's going to break out, as was speculated in spring training. He has not produced a single hard-hit ball against a left-handed pitcher since August 30th of last season. Lefties are throwing him more changeups this year, and he swung and missed at every single one that they've thrown this year. He's hitting .074 against fastballs this season. Fastballs, .074, and only Billy Hamilton has a lower hard-hit average against fastballs this season.
Nick Castellanos, this comes from a request from Josh Rock City.
So what's interesting about Castellanos is he is struggling enormously against everything on the outer half and thriving against everything on the inner half. He's got a .154 batting average against pitches on the outer half with a 38% swing and miss rate. 21 of his 30 strikeouts have come in a pitch on the outer half. Against the inner half, he's hitting .333, much lower swing and miss rate. 3 of his 4 home runs have come on the inner half. What's interesting is that from a left-handed pitcher perspective, no batter is seeing more changeups from lefties than Nick Castellanos this season. He's at 33.6% of all of his pitches. No other batter is above 28. And from a right-handed perspective, only 3 batters are seeing a lower percentage of fastballs from righties this year. He's seeing fewer than 44% fastballs. So there seems to be a very distinct plan of attack with Castellanos, and for the most part, it's working.
Yes, he sounds like his numbers basically mirror those of Evan Gattis. Hey, guys, thanks for doing this. And just as you guys know, on Tuesday you'll be filling in for me as host of this podcast, The Fireball Express, Karl Ravech and Justin Havens.
Looking forward to that, folks. The Fireball Express needs to travel twice a week. I think this is good.
Take care, guys.
See ya.
See ya.
Jonathan Lucroy is the catcher of the Milwaukee Brewers, one of the best catchers in baseball. And, Jonathan, today we've been talking about walk-off hits, and you actually got to score the decisive run yesterday when Chris Davis hit a single to center field. Now, I'm curious, on a play like that, when was the instant that you realized that you were going to score the winning run?
Well, you know, the way on second, it's kind of hard to read. It's hard to read that. I didn't realize that he was a broken bat single. I thought it was going to be like a, you know, it was going to be. I thought it was going to be close of a McCutcheon catching or not. So I actually started running, and then I had to look back to make sure that the ball was going to die. You know, because it kind of hit it. He broke his bat on it. It was a little flare type thing, and you know, but it was about halfway to the outfield before I realized that I was good, and I just started beating it to third, and then just pushing it as good as I could go.
Now, most of your teammates naturally ran to pummel Chris after he got that hit, but I think your head-first dive in home plate was greatly underappreciated. It was kind of like the way Michael Phelps would do it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, you know what? I was sitting there, and you know, we're always taught to slide feet first in the home because, you know, you can break a hand and fingers and everything else sliding in the home, jamming a finger on on a catcher's shin guards or anything like that. But I was like, you know what? I don't want this to be a close play, so I'm going to try to do a hook slide. And if this is close, I'm going to just try to swipe it because you can't block the plate anyway. So I'm going to try to swipe my hand by and see, just to make sure. And it ended up not even being close at all. So. Yeah, it was fun. I did a little dirt angel at the end there, just have a little fun with it, and got up and got out of there.
Now, I had this, my 9-year-old son went to Bristol with me, and we did Baseball Tonight last night, and he had some input on the web gems. And when they told me that Brandon Phillips, there's no slight on Brandon Phillips, great play in his game, but when he told me the Mark Reynolds play to start a double play yesterday was only number 2 on the web gems, I was killing him. I'm like, what, are you kidding me? That was maybe the most important play in the game, and it was, for me, a game changer. Would you agree with me?
Absolutely. You know, I was playing first at the time, and I tell you what, it about knocked him on his, you know, he almost sat down, like it, because, you know, the ball hopped up on him, and he picked it, and he almost sat down to catch it. It was kind of weird, but wow, it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, and at that time, you guys were down by a run. If that ball gets past him, it goes in the corner. 2 more runs might score, but it really kept you guys in position to get the walk-off. I want to pose this to you because I get asked this question all the time about you guys, and I ask this as an open-ended question and not as a defend yourself. What makes you guys believe that you have staying power from this great start?
Well, you know, I think that we believe in ourselves, and we know that our pitching staff is really, really good, and we believe that our pitching staff is going to keep us there. Are we hitting the way we want to hit right now? No. We're not scoring as many runs as we want to score. I mean, obviously, having injuries is going to affect that. But, you know, that's a good thing about this game is that you can have good pitching and they'll keep you in the game the whole time and play good defense. So that's what we're trying to do right now. We're realizing that we're not going to score a million runs all the time, but that we can hit, we can hang in there. We just got to have our pitching staff and our defense locked down.
What's it been like to get off to the start, and what's the atmosphere around the team?
You know, everybody's loose and happy and having fun, and I think that's what it's about. You know, we're just kind of, you know, having a good time, having fun, and just really loose and laid back. I mean, it's nothing. We're optimistic, and I think we believe in ourselves, and we know that we're good, and that's what, you know, those are all the signs of a winning team. We're confident.
Now, catchers are known as the smartest people in the game, which is why you have so many former catchers who become managers. So I know that you see a lot of stuff, you watch a lot of stuff. I wanted to ask you about particular skills in other catchers. Who do you think in baseball is someone you like to watch blocking balls in the dirt, and why?
Well, I mean, let's see here, blocking balls. I mean, of course, you can go to the gold standard, probably Yachty. You know, Yachty's one of the best blockers around. And even before Yachty, whenever I was coming up, you know, I like to watch Jason Kendall block. I mean, it was really impressive to watch him. And I had a privilege of actually playing with him, and when he would block, the ball wouldn't even kick away from him, but it just hit him and just stopped right in front of him. And it took me a while to figure out how to do that. But Yachty, nowadays, Yachty's pretty good at it. You know, he's always just very quiet and soft back there, and that's what it's about.
What about throwing? Who's the catcher you love to watch throw?
Man, you got to go back to Yachty again. I mean, that's one of the things with him. I mean, Yachty is so good and talented all around. You know, it's kind of hard not to give him that kind of credit. You know, he's just pick guys off. He's quick. Arm strength is there, and he just kind of has the whole package.
Who's a guy who's interesting to watch as a pitch caller from a catcher's perspective?
You know, pitch calling is so hard. I mean, pitch calling, I mean, it's so difficult because you got guys that it all depends on your pitchers. I mean, you could be the smartest, you got a photographic memory, pitch caller, best, you know, you could study everything, memorize it all together, but if your pitcher doesn't execute, it doesn't matter, you know. So it's just one of those things that I can't really put my fingers on pitch calling. I mean, that's kind of hard because it all depends on your pitchers too. Because I mean, your pitchers make you look good, and that's what the thing is. I mean, I'm not sitting here trying to be the smartest guy in the world, but if my pitcher executes every single pitch, we're probably going to win. You know, so that's what it depends on.
Yeah, you're kind of at the mercy of the command of the pitcher that day.
It really is.
What pitch is working.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember once you talked about Molina. I remember once Dave Duncan used an interesting word, the former Cardinals pitching coach, in describing what Yadi does. He said he has a great imagination for pitch calling, that there'll be different things that he'll pull out in different parts of the game. But you're right, it all is predicated on how much leeway your pitcher gives on a given day.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just about execution.
Exactly. Who do you like watch in terms of framing pitches?
Framing? Man. You know what? I saw what really surprised me when we played the Padres this year. I think is it Rivera? One of the guys?
Yeah, Rene Rivera.
Rene Rivera. I was really impressed by him. I really was. And I was sitting there watching him catch, and I was like, this guy knows what he's doing back there. And, because that pitch calling is something that I myself take a lot of pride in, and I do a lot of work with it. And I take it serious because I think it's a very important part. And I think that it's predicated on, obviously your pitcher's out there battling and he's fighting and stuff. And, I take it personal whenever if I mess a pitch up, if I take the ball out of the zone or I clank one or whatever, I get very, very upset with myself if I do that, and the pitcher is just hard enough to throw strikes already. So, I want to make sure that the pitcher gets it whenever he throws it. And, I was watching him, and he was really quiet with his body and his hand. All he was moving was his hands, and he was just catching it and stopping it. And it was very impressive. I haven't seen a lot of guys that can do that, but he looked really good.
I want to ask you about this because I've had a lot of conversations with catchers through the years about working with umpires, and so many of them will essentially, in other words, I remember when I covered Joe Girardi and was with the Yankees, he might get called out on a pitch that's a foot outside, but for the most part, he wouldn't say a word. He would just walk back to the dugout. Who's someone that you watch with another team who you think is good at dealing with umpires?
I can't really just put a singular name on anybody, but the best experiences I've had with umpires and even other guys in general is umpires are humans and they're going to make mistakes, and the best way that I've found to work with them is that you just talk to them and you're nice to them and you're respectful. That's the best way. If you disagree with something they call, just say, hey, where do you have that at? We'll say down or out or whatever, and you say, well, I think that was a pretty good pitch. I had that there, and you just be respectful. That's the only thing to me is I've seen guys get in trouble where they'll cuss at umpires and we'll yell at them. They'll get mad and argue and all that stuff. That doesn't work. It doesn't work with umpires, and in fact, it might make them, tighten up a little more, and you don't want that. You want guys to do their best and call the pitches as they see them. However, I find that being respectful and nice and just ask questions and just be calm is the best way to handle things.
Alex Avila told me that he feels like honesty is a big part of it, too, where he mentioned that with some umpires, he'll develop a rapport where they'll say, hey, what'd you have on that one? And if they got it right, then he'll tell them. Or if they got it wrong and they're asking the question, he'll do that, too. And he feels like that's a really good way for a catcher to build up a rapport with an umpire. Is that your experience?
Yeah, that's absolutely accurate. I mean, guys ask you. I had a guy ask me the other day whenever I was hitting. After I ended up walking, but I came up to home plate and he's like, "Where'd you have that?" And I go, "Dude, I think that last pitch on me was a strike." I said, I know I walked right there and it was a great thing for the team, but look, I said, I think you got a little tight. I think it was a strike. And I went back and watched the video, and it was there, so I was like, I'm just letting you know, I'm being honest with you that, just don't get too, just lock her back in, and so that, that's, that all it is about being honest, I think. I think honesty is the best policy, and sometimes, if guys ask you questions, you just tell them what you think and be respectful and honest, and I think it always works out for the best after that.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks for doing this.
Hey, you got it. Anytime.
One last thing.
Mike Moustakas began the week hitting about 150 or so. The Royals third baseman off to a slow start after having a great spring, after having some real struggles in 2013. And so earlier this week, Sam Mellinger, a columnist from the Kansas City Star, wrote that the Royals should send Moustakas to the minor leagues. And it led to a conversation in Kansas City for about 48 hours about Moustakas and his standing in the big leagues, and should the Royals turn to Danny Valencia, either in a platoon or as the everyday third baseman. Well, on Wednesday, Moustakas had a good day. He had a couple hits. He drove in a couple of runs. And after the game, however, when he was approached by reporters, he made it very clear he wasn't going to talk about himself. Now, according to the stories, and I was not there, but according to the stories that were written, Moustakas actually took some time, waited to come out before talking with the reporters. He stopped by his locker, left. Eventually, he did come back, and here was a series of answers he gave as they tried to get him to talk about himself and his role in Wednesday's victory.
What did that feel there, man?
You know, it's a big win for us. You know, again, oh my God, against a great team. So it feels good, you know, be able to go out there and get a W with the quality start that Vargy had, and you know, being able to get that sweep today.
Personally, getting those two doubles, and
you know, Vargy pitched a great game today. He threw the ball fantastic for us. We played great defense today, and we were able to come away with the W.
How about that play that you and Salvi engineered there? That was a big play.
Yeah, you know, me and Salvi, we've been on the same page for a long time. Been playing the same playing together for a while now. So I kind of just looked at him, he looked at me, and we kind of knew it was on. So that's just kind of how it happened.
You did get the biggest hit of the game. Can you talk about it?
You know, Vargy threw the ball fantastic for us tonight. And
so what's this all about?
Vargy threw the ball great for us tonight, or today. He did a fantastic job, you know, keeping the ball down in the zone. You know, challenged them, got them swinging and missing a lot, and, you know, came out with the W today.
I'm going to go one more time. You had the biggest hit of the game. Can you talk about it?
You know, Vargy had a great game tonight. He threw the ball well for us, kept the ball down in the zone, and, you know, he made some quality pitches when he had to.
Why are you doing this?
I'm just crediting my team right now.
You know, you knocked in all 3 runs and you got the win, though.
Yeah, you know, I mean, like I said, Vargy did a great job today, and he threw the ball fantastic for us.
Now, that sound was courtesy of Kansas City radio station 810 WHB. I think we've established one thing. Vargy had a good game. No doubt about it. Wouldn't you say that, Josh?
It sounds like Vargy had one heck of a game. He kept the ball down in the zone.
He did have one.
Yeah, he pitched real well.
Now, look, Mike Moustakas is the only one who knows exactly why he was answering questions that way. It's certainly reasonable speculation that maybe he wasn't thrilled with the conversation earlier in the week about him being sent down to the minor leagues, about whether or not he should lose his standing as an everyday player. And when I heard this, I thought back to a guy who actually was raised in Kansas City and what he would tell teammates, and that was David Cohn, who was the best that I ever saw at dealing with the media. And it wasn't only being helpful to the media, it was a strategic point of view from 4 players. And he would always give great advice to other players. And one of the things that he would always say is, look, the first thing is that generally speaking, other people want you to do well. They don't want you to struggle. And they're going to, and he talked about the members of the media, he said, they're going to ask you questions according to how you're performing. And if you had a struggle in 2013 and you got off to a tough start and you're hitting 147, which is what Moustakas' average at the beginning of the game on Wednesday, guess what? That's going to be a topic of conversation. And it's not personal. It's related to performance. And he also made it very clear to other players on the Yankees, look, just go out and be accountable and just own up when you don't play well. And because at that point, what else can reporters really ask you? So he would say, if you were to go out and before the reporters get interested, say, you know what, I was terrible and it cost me, I cost us the game tonight. I was awful and I wish I could do better. That at that point, what else can the writers ask? And so when I heard this, it made me shake my head. I'm assuming that he probably wasn't happy about the conversation going into it. Well, you know what? If you're hitting $147 going into a game, those are the type of questions that are going to be asked. And just go out and answer the questions and don't create a story for the next day. And I can tell you from reading the papers in Kansas City, when I did radio in Kansas City and heard this, that's all anybody was talking about, was the way Moustakas answered questions after that game. So, and it's just a piece of advice from some idiot who's been covering it for almost 30 years. Just answer the questions. Josh, do you agree with me?
I think Vargy pitched a great game, Buster. Kept the ball down in the zone.
Excellent answer, Josh. That is absolutely perfect. That's it for today. My thanks to Jonathan Lucroy and to the Fireball Express, Justin Havens, and Karl Ravech, and to Josh Macri, who produces this podcast. We've got the Tigers and Red Sox on Sunday Night Baseball. Thanks for listening, and have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Baseball Tonight podcast. If you're playing fantasy baseball, don't forget to listen to the Fantasy Focus podcast. Check out all podcasts at ESPN.com/PodCenter. Baseball Tonight, the podcast.